All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is 1:30. We're going to call the Transportation Advisory Committee meeting to order. First, we're going to do a call to order followed by introductions. So Jared, can you, and Danelle, can you guys help me confirm that we have a quorum, please? And as what you're doing, so I'll kick off the introductions. This is Gail Sturdivant. So for the City of Colorado Springs as the Deputy Public Works Director and City Engineer and as your TAC Chair. To my right.
Jeff Guthrie, CDOT Region 2 Planner.
Karen McCarthy, Executive Director of Pike Ride.
Carrie Simison, Board Chair of Pike Ride. Land Rail Transit Services Manager. Thank you.
Tim Roberts, Transportation Planning Manager, City of Colorado Springs.
William Mast, GIS and Modeling Lead, Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments.
Danelle Miller, Transportation Planner, Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments.
Jess Bechtel, PPACG Tip Planner.
And Jared, if you could help us go through the list of folks that are joining us online for introductions, please.
I'll be happy to. We've got quite a few people online, so just sticking with those who are members of the TAC. Let's start first with, looks like Sheila Booth.
Sheila Booth, Town of Monument.
Thank you. Victoria Chavez.
Victoria Chavez, El Paso County Transportation Planning Manager.
All righty. Thank you. From CDOT, looks like we have Lachelle Davis.
Hi, Lachelle Davis, Region 2 Local Agency.
And also from CDOT, Rob Free or Fry. Sorry, Rob.
Yep, Rob Fry, CDOT Planning Environmental.
Very good. And before I go to PPACG staff, if there's anybody in the attendees list who I missed, I see one additional one. I'm going to let Dole in. Dole, if you can go and introduce yourself. Oh, Jason, I got you. I didn't recognize the last name. Okay, so we'll continue to go through those who are members. We got Jason from Palmer Lake.
Yeah, this is Jason with the Town of Palmer Lake. Can you hear me? I was having mic problems.
We are set. Thank you, Jason.
All right.
Benjamin Schmidt.
Hi, this is Ben Schmidt from City Woodland Park.
Thank you. And yeah, we've got Dole. I think he put something in the chat, looks like. Oh, never mind. Dole, if you can introduce yourself.
Sure. This is Dole Grubenic, City Engineer for Manitou Springs.
All right, Madam Chair. And then going to PPACG staff, we got John Leosados.
Hello.
Hello, John. Jason. Oh, Jason's behind me. Never mind. I apologize. And Laura Cruz.
Laura Cruz, Mobility Coordinator.
Alrighty, I believe that is everyone who is on the TAC roster in one way or another.
Can I just ask to see if there's anybody from Federal Highways on today? I can't see all the attendees. All right, we'll move on from that. So you all received the your packet prior to the meeting to include the agenda. I'm asked to see if there's any request for modification of the agenda, and if none, request somebody put a motion forth to approve the agenda.
Land Rail, move to approve.
This is Jason. I'll second.
All right, we got a motion by Lan, a second by Jason. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Okay, the agenda is approved. I'm going to open it up to public comments for items that are not currently on the agenda. I'm going to start first with those that are in the room, and then if you are online and wish to make public comment for something not on the agenda, please electronically raise your hand. So in the room, anyone would like to make public comment? Seeing none, anyone online that would like to make public comment?
Madam Chair, no one has raised their hand yet, and we have not received any advance requests by email for public comment either.
Perfect, thank you. It does look like we might have a chat. Could you double check to make sure there's not something in there? Okay, great, thank you. I just want to make sure. All right, here now we're going to move on to the approval of the minutes. Again, the minutes were published in your packet. And if there's any corrections, I ask that you bring those to our attention. Otherwise, I'd be looking for a motion to approve the minutes.
Plan move to approve.
For those of
This
you
is
that are
Jason, I'll
online.
second. Yeah,
Perfect,
this is
thank
Jason,
you.
I'll second.
Perfect. Thank you, Jason. So we've got a motion by Lan, a second by Jason. Any further comment? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. The minutes are approved. Before we move on to the director's report, I just want to let those that are online, we have several people attending virtually today. So in the room, you only have 2 voting members. It's myself, who will not be making motions, and Lan. So she's going to be needing help from others that are online today. Board of Directors report. John, I know you are joining us virtually today. I don't know if you're going to do it or if you're going to punt to Danelle and Jessica to help out.
I'm always happy to punt, but I think we really only had, let's see, Laura and Will did the Title VI and Limited English Proficiency Plan yesterday, and that was approved. And Laura, you can chime in, but I think the main sticking point there was the plan didn't have the correct date on it. And then as long as we had to take it back, FTA had a sort of a laundry list of other updates, including sort of the methodology to create the maps, which created the now infamous percentage versus percentile discussion. So that was yesterday, and that was transportation related. Additionally, then we also talked about the Fountain Rail Yard and the group that's been working on that for 16 years. Wants to investigate having PPACG as the applicant. Just as a quick aside, if any of the jurisdictions can manage the Tabor hit and actually be the applicant, that would probably be better for them in the long run. But we realize we might be the only game in town, and we're happy to work with the folks because we do think the Fountain Rail Yard project is rather important. Am I missing anything, Danelle and Will and Laura?
Nope, that's it.
And John, I missed who you said that the applicant or what type of grant they were applying for or interested in pursuing. Could you repeat that, please?
Sure. No, and I don't think I actually said so.
Okay.
Thanks for keeping me honest there. So the folks that have been working on this Fountain Rail Yard again for over 16 years. The Chamber, Colorado Springs Utilities, Colorado Springs, El Paso County, Fountain, and others. Quite frankly, I can't remember them all. They finally have their trackage agreement and they're ready to go after a CRISI grant. Well, the CRISI grant's a federal grant, so that won't be a Tabor hit. However, I think there is still some scrambling and discussion about where the local match would come from. If the local match is determined that they want to try to go after the state DOLA Loma grant, which was the Loma program was created, I think 2 years ago by the state legislature to basically provide funding through the DOLA process to provide the match required to go after all of these IIJA funds that they created. Well, because the DOLA Loma is state funds, it would be a hit to your Tabor cap. So I think in looking at all of this, if they can figure out how to have one of the jurisdictions be the grantee or the applicant slash sponsor. They're probably better off than having PPACG do it because, quite frankly, you guys know how to do these big projects and you're much more experienced at it. That being said, because of the match question slash Tabor hit that might come with that, PPACG might be sort of their only avenue moving forward. And if that's the case, the item at the board meeting yesterday was to discuss, or at least let the board know that we were entering into discussions, and no action was taken. However, we're going to start working in earnest with the folks to figure out the best path forward, which could include PPACG being the applicant for the Chrissy grant moving forward, and then figuring something out for the local match. Again, just as a quick aside, the DOLA Loma, PPACG is not an eligible recipient, so we cannot apply for that. So they've got to figure something else out when it comes to match.
Okay, great. And it looks like Victoria has her hand up. Go ahead, Victoria.
Hi, thank you. So when we were at the Regional Infrastructure Grant Conference on Tuesday in Woodland Park, somebody had asked the question about that Loma being Tabor, and the DOLA gentleman noted that because it's a match to a federal grant, DOLA would be sending that directly to the feds, and it wouldn't be recognized and appropriated by the local government. And his opinion, and certainly your legal person would need to check this out, but his opinion was that it would not count towards a jurisdiction's local to their Tabor cap.
That is awesome.
Victoria, that's interesting because, and doesn't necessarily make sense, even though it's what he said. Because when you get these federal grants, you actually have to pay for them and apply for reimbursement. That you don't send money to the feds. The feds don't pay anything directly.
No, but DOLA may pay it directly to the feds.
Still
for the
doesn't.
local match.
Yeah, we need to.
Yeah.
We would need to get some clarification. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
absolutely. I agree that it needs to be checked, but that was what he said, so I wanted to share that. And then part two, we also have that process where PPRTA can apply for a local jurisdiction, receive the money, and pass it through. So that may be another option rather than PPACG applying. PPRTA could apply on behalf of a local government, and that would avoid the Tabor cap. So
yeah,
two options to think
That's
about.
a great idea. And if Fountain joins, it would make sense for them to take the lead on that. So that's a great suggestion.
Yes. Agreed all the way around. Great suggestion.
I've had my meeting now.
Yeah, no, you've already won the meeting, Victoria. None of us need to try. No, that all of that is great, especially hearing about that for the like the Safe Streets for All thing that we've been talking about. Again, DOLA has been yeah, I guess you heard a lot of different information at that conference than we've been hearing otherwise, but that's great, and I think that opens up a lot of doors. So thank you very much.
Okay. Anything else in the Board of Directors report? All right, moving on. Under action items, item 6A, fiscal year 24-25 Unified Planning Work Plan, or UPWP, public comment period. Danelle?
Yes, good afternoon. So we at PPACG are required to do a unified planning work program. This is a 2-year document that we put together that basically details all of the work that our transportation staff is going to undertake utilizing our consolidated planning grant funds that come to us from the federal government. And in addition to that, we also include in that document a list of any transportation planning related activities that are conducted by our local jurisdictions within our MPO as well. So we do create a new document every 2 years. We update it in the off years. Today we have the 2024, 2025 UPWP. And what we're really asking for today from TAC is a recommendation to the board to allow this document to go out for public comment. And we will put it out for a 30-day public comment period. After that, we will incorporate any public comments or TAC, CAC, or board comments into the document and bring it back for formal recommendation for approval. And happy to answer any questions on the actual UPWP itself. I think everybody on TAC should be fairly up to date with all of the work that we're doing or anticipate doing in the next couple of years, but absolutely happy to answer any questions either here or offline.
Thank you. Any questions? Sorry, I'm having a hard time getting the links to work here. All right, hearing no questions, then are we comfortable sending this out for the 30-day public comment period? And if so, can I get a motion?
This is Len. Move to approve.
Victoria, second.
All right, got a motion by Lan, a second by Victoria. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. All right, great. Thank you. Let's approve the release for the public comment period. Moving on to item 6B. Thank you. I'm going to turn it back over to Danelle to introduce our TIP amendment and our call for projects.
Yes, so we were recently notified that we would have some funds returned to us to redistribute. This included $869,295 in carbon reduction program funding. That's a new federal funding source. And then also $45,000 in multimodal transportation and mitigations option fund dollars. And again, those particular MMOF funds are ARPA funds that have been moved through MMOF. So they do have that deadline of being encumbered in a contract by the end of 2024 and expended by the end of 2026. We put out in alignment with TAC guidance, we put out a call for projects. And we have received those applications. We received applications from 3 applicants for 4 different projects. And I'm going to actually share my screen so that you can see those particular amounts. It will let me. Okay. So we only had one applicant for MMOF funding. That was MMT, and that project is the Downtown Shuttle Operations project. So that additional $45,000 would allow MMT to operate the downtown shuttle for an additional period of time. MMT does already have this particular funding source for the downtown shuttle as well, which was awarded to them in February of this year. I don't know if you want to take these 2 funding sources separately. Okay.
Yes, let's do that today. So given there's only one applicant, any discussions on the MMOF funding? And it appears since we have one application that awarding that to Mountain Metro Transit per their application request. And I would be looking for further discussion or a motion to approve that funding.
Victoria, I'll move approval.
Thank you, Victoria.
This is Jason. I'll second.
All right, I've got a motion by Victoria, a second by Jason. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. All right, hearing none, the 45,000 will be awarded to Mountain Metro and MMOF funding for the downtown shuttle project. All right, and then I think you're going to do an introduction, correct, for the carbon reduction fund on our 3 applications.
Correct, yes. So we did have 3 applicants apply for carbon reduction funds. All 3 are here today to present a little bit about their project, just a short brief, and then answer any questions that the TAC may have. The first, and let me increase this so it's a little bit easier for you to read. The first sponsor is Pike Ride, and they are looking for a project cost of $100,000 that breaks down to a little less than $83,000 in federal funding, and then a match of 17 to 10. That would be for operations. Monument, the town of Monument is asking for 200,000 in federal funding and a little over $41,000 in match related to solar lighting for the Jackson Creek Parkway widening project. And then finally, MMT is requesting the full $869,000 to add to their existing project for vehicle purchases. This will purchase up to 9 hybrid vehicles, and they did, if I remember correctly, and Lan can certainly correct me, this project was a project that was awarded funding earlier, but it wasn't awarded the full amount of funding. So this amount would bring it closer to that original request. At this point, Pike Ride, if you would say a few words about your project and answer questions, that would be wonderful.
Sure. So we have requested the $82,000 for our general operating funds for the carbon reduction program. We are an e-bike share nonprofit here in Colorado Springs and in Manitou Springs. We have continued to see our ridership increase year over year. Last year it was just underneath 50% increase from 2021. And we're expecting a 50% increase in the usage of our bike program. This does directly relate to folks getting out of their cars and on bikes for the carbon reduction. For our 50% increase of rides this year, that brings us to about 80,000 rides for the entire year, which is about 152,000 miles traveled by bicycle rather than in fuel-based vehicles. Last year, we did see a 46,000 pounds of CO2 reduction from our rides from last year, so that will obviously be increased. These general operating funds will go towards 4 hub installations. And so this is for equipment and then our staffing to actually install those hubs. And then for the actual maintenance of the hub and then the e-bikes that will be out and about at those hubs. We have been increasing the number of hubs within our service area since our introduction into the community in 2018. And as we see hub increase, we also see that increase of ridership and obviously the miles traveled by bikes. So this absolutely helps us with the carbon reduction program. And we would love to be able to continue to provide services to the communities of both Manitou and Colorado Springs.
Great. Thank you very much for your presentation. I'm going to open this up for questions and I'm going to kick it off right now. And I don't know that we had anyone from Federal Highways join us. If so, this may be directed to you. And if not, CDOT, maybe you can help. And then I'll be asking the PPACG staff. But under this Carbon Reduction Fund program, I want to verify that Pike Ride is a nonprofit organization, that they are eligible to be a direct recipient of these funds. So again, I'm not sure there's anyone from Federal Highways on. If so, please speak up.
I didn't see anyone from
I didn't either.
Highways join. And Erin Besto is out on paternity leave right now. So
Okay. Is there anyone from CDOT that can help us with the verification that Pike Ride could be a direct recipient? Thank you, Jeff. And then Danielle, I think that you had some consultation prior to this meeting. Could you please share what you learned?
We did. We did email with Aaron Busto from FHWA, and he did confirm that nonprofits, including Pike Ride, were eligible for this funding so long as we could verify that they were able to handle the federal funds and the federal regulation or requirements that come along with that.
Okay, great. And it looks like Phil's also looking through the regulations to help us verify that, as Jeff is here in the room as well. My other question is going to be, as a recipient of federal funds, well, first of all, it sounded like your application said operating, but when you gave the description, that didn't sound like operating to me. It sounded like you're doing equipment and installation. So my question was really going to be, before you just mentioned that, are you already set up to be a direct recipient of federal funding and understand the requirements? And when it's just operating, it's probably one set of requirements. But when you mentioned that you were to be doing installation of hubs, if that was going to be triggering NEPA requirements that you may or may not be anticipating. So I wanted to make sure that you were comfortable and had the expertise to be able to move forward with that.
Yeah, I can't directly answer that question, but our board of directors is full of folks who are within city and municipality government. We also have several financial advisors, including a CPA firm, on our board of directors that can help us navigate those waters if we do not already have documentation and procedures.
Okay. The one thing I will mention to you, and Michelle, I think Michelle and Victoria have their hands up, and I'll let them speak here in just a moment. The one thing, when you look at your staff, folks, if you're going to be doing an installation, and if there are federal or the environmental requirements going through that local agency, you've got to have a responsible charge. And in the state of Colorado, unless something's changed, that has to be a licensed professional engineer within the state. But anyway, so I think we're still gonna have some more questions of this, because what I understood your application to say and what you're presenting are different.
That one. We did look at our proposed list of hubs that we want to install this year. We have a proposed list of 19, and 16 of those would not be affected by NEPA. So we do have a list that we can go through, but we did review that in advance.
Great, thank you. Okay, I've got a couple hands up. Lachelle, can you go? It looks like you have your hand up twice, maybe. Oh, second. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I see that. Victoria.
No, I'd like to let Michelle go first.
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate that. Lachelle.
Okay, thanks, Victoria. So we do actually have some funds in the TIP that are designated towards Pike Ride, but actually I think the sponsor was Colorado Springs. I'm checking on that now.
That is correct. We are.
Yeah, so I just wondered if this project was in relation to that, because I know that the bids came in high for that project. And so I didn't know if this was something completely different, or if we were purchasing equipment with the first one that's sponsored by Colorado Springs and then installing with this one.
That's a great question. Yeah, I don't know the answer. A great question, because it's different than what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, Lachelle, we will have to come back with an answer to that. Both Carrie and I will have to do a little bit of background and give you a response.
Sounds good. If that is the case, this has been through the local agency process, and it has been through clearances, utilities, environmental, and right-of-way. But I just know that the bids came back extremely high. So.
Okay. Victoria, do you have a question now?
Don't have a question. I have a comment.
Okay.
Since when we put this out, we noted that we were going to be prioritizing projects that have cost overruns. So if Mountain Metro would be willing to reduce their ask by $200,000, I would like to discuss potentially funding both Jackson Creek and Mountain Metro, because of our policy to fund those cost overruns first.
Yeah, Lane, would you like to speak to that about the scalability of your project?
Sure. Victoria, yes, our project is scalable. And yes, we're willing to work with other member governments.
Tim, did you have a question? Oh, go ahead, Victoria. Was there a follow on?
Have a follow-on. I'm ready to make a motion if nobody else has comments.
I do.
Yes, we there's still questions.
Yeah.
And we've got to go through the other two presenters. Unless you wanted to skip all that, Victoria, is that what you were trying to imply?
No,
This
you
is
can go
Sheila.
through
I
the-
can be very quick.
Okay.
No, you can go through them all. I am willing to wait. I was just letting you know I'm ready.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Victoria. Sheila, please go ahead and tell us about your project and your request.
Okay, so we have the Jackson Creek Parkway widening. We initially were going to use our typical Mountain View Electric lighting poles where they own and maintain them. We then hired Verigy to come in and help the town with some energy consulting. They suggested looking at solar lighting, so we looked at that. We found that it does reduce the carbon emissions, but it also would be a good showcase for us to try to implement that throughout the town. So we looked at increasing our budget to acquire the solar lighting along Jackson Creek Parkway, and that's what we have before you.
And I would suspect that that's a project, although it doesn't have carbon reduction funds yet, it has cost overruns. So you would like it to be considered as a prioritized project for these funds. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mountain Metro. Is there anything else that you wanted to add? I know Victoria asked you the question about being able to scale your project and willing to reduce your request.
Yes, we are willing to do that. Do you want me to go over our project request, or do you? I
You're
do have
happy to
some,
talk about it, but I think it's for the
Yeah,
electric buses.
hybrid buses.
Hybrid
Yeah.
buses, okay.
I do have a few questions on Pike Ride project.
Yeah, I've got some more as well, but you go ahead.
Okay. One question is along the eligibility applicants, along that line. If that is the information, I think, should be as the tech, I'm thinking about our RFP process. If someone is eligible and that was not listed here, and someone went forward with that application, are we being fully transparent in terms of the eligibility requirements for other potential nonprofits who might also be interested in funding? So that's one question. My second question is along what Gail mentioned earlier. The project description seems a little more restrictive than what you went over. And I am interested to see that breakdown between capital and operating and also your full budget. Because $100,000 sounds like it's for both installation, maintenance, and general operating. It is, I think it would help me to see your full annual operating budget and capital to see how this fits in the big picture. Those are my questions.
Okay. Well, and I think that there's still some general questions about how this fits with the other award that the city has received on Pikes Ride's behalf. Go ahead, Tim.
And I was gonna, excuse me, Tim Roberts, City of Colorado Springs, and I was gonna mention that. You mentioned a list of projects. Now, are they different than the list of projects we already have on our current list we're working that the city's sponsoring? Because we are having problems getting those, as Gail pointed out, we're having problems getting those under contract. We're actually we're considering changing the name of the project. So if we're looking at capital improvements, we probably need to discuss that further. If you're talking about operations like your management, then and then that's separate from the city of Colorado Springs. So we really need to either have a further discussion if we're talking capital, or have a better understanding if it's more of your business operations.
So the city sponsored project, is this the one that's kind of been held up where we have the 18,000 invested as a match, but the 57 hasn't come through? Is that
Yeah,
project?
it's not that the 57 hasn't come through. It's being able to get people to bid to do the work for that lower amount of a project.
Okay. Um,
And then, can I add on there, because we couldn't get anything to bid, my understanding that instead of actually bidding the work out, that we would potentially were considering buying the equipment and turning it over to Pike Ride for self-installation. That being said, it still requires, there is a difference between operating and capital. Again, when we first read your application for this carbon reduction was for just operating. So we probably do need a little bit more granular to understand how that all fits. And then the question still comes on, I know we said, we've asked the question about if you can be a direct recipient, does this get more convoluted when you're mixing capital with operating, and how that being a recipient would be impacted, or is it impacted? And maybe it's not, but just to make sure we understand what all the requirements are.
so apologies, Tara's our incoming new executive director. Today's actually her 6th day. And as board chair, I've been, covering for the last couple months while we've been in this transition. So apologies that we don't have all of the answers that you guys are looking for. We will have to look into what the existing CDOT grant request was written to cover. This one was, there are 17 hubs we would like to install by the end of this year. I don't think they overlap with that list, but again, apologies, I don't actually have that information. But this was to cover installation of 4 each hub installation, concrete, bikes, bike racks, and then maintenance of the hub runs about $25,000. And so the 87 would cover about 3 of those, and our match would cover the 4th one. So that's what the grant was written for 4 of these potential 19 that we'd like to do before the end of the year.
Okay, so that really falls under capital more than.
Yeah, it is totally, it's all capital, not operating.
Yeah.
So then that kind of brings up my other question. Again, are you guys really prepared to be able to take that on and have the capabilities, the expertise to have somebody serve as a responsible charge and fulfill all the requirements that would be in CDOT's local agency manual if you were a recipient of these funds?
We're absolutely prepared for it. We currently are working with the Colorado Energy Office on a grant, and we've had one in the past. So we are familiar with working with grants on a governmental level. And we do have 3 nonprofit experts on our board that have agreed to help us through anything that we need and any questions that we have. So we're definitely prepared to meet any requirements that are out there.
And please forgive me, and this is not meant to sound rude, but that doesn't sound reassuring to me, to be quite honest with you, because the energy grants and what you're asking for these transportation grants are managed completely differently. Each federal agency has their own requirements. In this case, if this falls under USDOT, federal highways, and then administered by CDOT. CDOT has a very detailed local agency manual that requires you to 2 things. And Jeff, if you want to add more to this, but first of all, you have to have a responsible charge. Again, in the state of Colorado, that can only be a licensed professional engineer. So if you have somebody in your board that's willing to step in and be that role, they can do so. But 2, with what you've described in your work, it sounds to me that you would trigger an environmental clearance, even if it was anticipated with the lowest level, a categorical exclusion. That's still a significant effort. You could spend all $100,000 just on going and doing that portion with the cultural resources, the right-of-way clearances, the utility clearances before you can go and put one thing in the ground. So I'm not convinced from what you said that you guys are really prepared to go and be able to do that. I'm supportive of the concept, don't get me wrong, but I have some really serious concerns that you're not maybe prepared for this funding type right now. So I don't know if others want to add anything on here.
I echo your concerns. As you know, if you're not applying for $500,000 in federal funds, it's just not worth your effort and time. It costs too much money to administer those funds, do all the reporting requirements, all of the NEPA stuff. If you're yeah, it's just not worth the bite at the apple for $100,000 in terms of these funds because the requirements are so stringent. You have to buy America, you have to do Davis-Bacon wages. There are so many things that I just don't see this happening for $100,000. But again, I'm going to reiterate, our policy is looking at cost overruns. And so I really do think we should prioritize the two projects that are existing projects that are experiencing cost overrun issues.
Other questions or discussion?
No, but I agree with what Victoria and Gail mentioned.
So let's talk about the path moving forward. You know, we will be looking for recommendations. I think that many of us on the TAC are supportive of the mission that Pike Ride has, but we do have, I think, concerns. Is there a path forward that they could be in a position to help Pike Ride, or any suggestions that folks have?
Just a thought, just from the, I think on the eligibility on page 4 of the NOFA, I think that might be the way forward, working with another agency who has more established processes, who has experience maybe working with CDOT and other agencies. Because even with our FTA grants, they look at, I forgot, 20 some areas, and we're actually in the middle of that triennial year for audit, and we have to submit our org chart, resumes, qualifications. They drill down to every single detail. So maybe working with another agency.
Okay. Yeah, Michelle, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I think that's why my biggest question was, is it part of the original project? But it doesn't sound like it is. Is that correct? Because the project that Colorado Springs sponsored.
I don't believe so. Again, I'm sorry. I'm not familiar with the specific details of that project, so I'd have to get that application out to compare it against the hubs that we're currently talking about. But I believe it's a different project.
Okay.
But
All right. Thank you. The other thing I was just going to recommend is I know for the existing project, there was an application put into revitalizing main streets. And so that's something you might want to look into, is the revitalizing main streets small opportunity grant. The existing project was actually denied, but we keep encouraging to put in applications because there is funding there that needs to be spent.
And Michelle, can I ask you a question about that funding opportunity? Did that come directly from Pike Ride, or is that actually one that they had to bring the city in on as well? And I don't know the answer.
I believe Pike Ride went for it themselves.
Okay,
So.
thank you. And they could be an eligible recipient underneath that program.
Yeah, yes, I believe so, because the Pike Ride had actually received a different revitalizing main streets from what I was told. I can't confirm this, but so they put in for another grant, they put in another application, and I don't know why it was denied, but maybe because they won't only fund, a sponsor once in a year's time, or I don't know quite all the ins and outs. Jeff might be able to help me a little bit with that, but I believe that they can be awarded. Yes, those grants, that grant, because that doesn't go through my unit. The revitalizing main streets goes through headquarters, and it's still on a reimbursable basis, but you aren't required to do the things that you're required to do for the grant, for this type of funding, and TAP and all of those.
Okay, great. Thanks, Michelle. Jeff is doing some research right now. While Jeff's doing some research, can I and I'm going to be looking to PPCACG staff to see if this is even a recommended motion that I'm going to state but not make, that someone else could make, that we would approve the 3 awards as presented, with the award to Pikes Ride being contingent upon verifying that that is what they're requesting would be to help with cost overruns of their existing project, which currently has MMOF funding. And if it's not, then that we not include that portion in our award. If that makes sense, because that right now the city is already positioned to be the local agency sponsor for them for that effort. That is a project that does have cost overruns that they are not able to achieve. They've gone through the environmental clearance. They could combine those funds with the ones that are already awarded and deliver the hubs that they're requesting be put in place. If it's not part of that project, then I would say that $100,000 I would recommend goes to Mountain Metro. And I'd be this anyway. It's an idea for a motion. I'm happy to open it up for further discussion or ideas. Victoria. Victoria, go ahead.
Yeah, because we had turned this money back in, it has some strict deadlines for use, so I'd be a little uncomfortable doing a contingent. We really rushed this this call for projects because of the deadline coming up on this money. I don't remember off the top of my head what it is, but I would prefer to see a motion that provides the 2 cost overrun projects, and I can even personally help assist with finding some other grant dollars for the Pike Ride. I am supportive of it. I don't think these are the right dollars for it. So with that, I would like to move that that the award go to Jackson Creek for 200,000 and to Mountain Metro for their amount minus the 200,000.
This is Lance. I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to award to Mountain in the amount of 200,000. Mountain Metro would agree to reduce their ask to $669,295 for the total award, with no funds being awarded to Pike Ride. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. All right, so that is our award distribution as outlined. And ladies, I do want to thank you for coming and presenting Pike Ride's project today. I do think it would be worthwhile to have discussion with both the city of Colorado Springs and if Victoria from El Paso County is willing to help out. I think we both agree what you guys do, and it's exactly the type of things that we need. We just need to find you the right color of money or expertise or collaboration.
Yeah, and we appreciate the opportunity and obviously the feedback that only helps us continue to do what we're doing and expand what we're doing in both cities. So we appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
It's our pleasure. All right. Thanks. Let's move on to the next item. It is item 7A, freight study. Jason?
Good afternoon, Jason O'Brien, PPACG Transportation Planner. Going to talk real quick about the freight study and then get into a presentation from our consultant team. So a couple of years ago, PPACG identified the need to do a freight study or plan for 2 reasons. First, we want to be able to support our member governments in pursuing freight-related grant applications. And second, we want to position the region to take advantage of state and federal freight program dollars. And with everybody else doing freight plans, we don't want to be at a disadvantage and want to make sure we capture our share of that. I'll go real fast in the interest of time. Conversations last year, we realized there just wasn't enough of a foundation laid to do something like a prioritized freight plan for the region. So it was decided that we would pursue a freight study instead, something focused on data gathering, needs assessment with a SWOT analysis at its core. Early this year, we hired Cambridge Systematics and their subconsultant, Wilson and Company, to lead the study. We think we've got a great team. Cambridge is deeply experienced in this area, and they're also very plugged in with state level freight planning that's going on concurrently. So we think there could be some helpful synergies there. I think with that, we're hoping to wrap up by the end of the year. And I think now I'll turn it over to Evan Anderson, our consultant team lead.
Thank you, Jason. Can you all hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. As Jason suggested, I'm Evan Anderson. I'm with Cambridge Systematics. Thank you for having us this afternoon. We're going to give a kind of a high-level overview of what we've been working on in terms of the regional freight study, share a little bit of what we've learned so far in conversations with stakeholders, and unveiling some new data and trends, and then give you a little bit of preview of what's coming next for this study as we look to wrap up. Certainly encourage questions and comments and observations, but this is really intended to give you a baseline understanding of what we're doing and why we're doing this study overall. So as Jason suggested, this is really a study that can position the region for success overall. It's really tend to be proactive and really help position the region to start planning and integrating freight and goods movement into everything we do. Freight is kind of an emerging planning area. Not a lot of small and mid-sized MPOs are engaging in this area at all. So I really applaud Pikes Peak for looking ahead and recognizing both the importance of freight and the potential impacts it has on our transportation system and communities. The study will be very collaborative. We're working closely with a variety of partners and stakeholders, and look forward to more conversations with folks throughout the region. Really want to make sure this has a lot of buy-in, and this study also provides information and materials that can be used by some of our partners. That's kind of the intention of really aligning this with some of the ongoing efforts. We're really kind of looking at the SEDS grant that is being prepared by PPACG, doing a lot of the analysis that's kind of in coordination with industry clusters that are looked at by the chamber, supporting efforts like the Front Range Dual Service Rail Park. So really kind of making sure that these efforts are really aligned with things that are going on across the region. Freight is a hard subject, and again, a kind of an emerging plan area. The data is not always there, and so the study will really provide some of that kind of baseline information, brand new freight-specific data that can be integrated into the long-range plan and other ongoing regional and local planning efforts overall. And then most importantly, as Jason suggested, it's really important that we kind of begin to position the region for capturing some of the federal dollars that are out there specific to freight. And so this study will kind of look to identify at a high level future potential projects, logistics-oriented development areas, potential future hubs, and kind of key corridors. So again, so that we can integrate these into planning efforts, but then also look at potential projects that could be funded with freight-specific dollars. We're really just kind of kicking off the study in the last couple months, kind of really digging into some of the existing data. That's really the approach we're taking, is really trying to collect and leverage a lot of the available data that's out there, particularly information that's coming from CDOT and some statewide freight planning efforts that are ongoing now. And then really coupling that with input from our partners and stakeholders, making sure we're listening to communities, to agency partners, to business, industry, and other kind of key economic development stakeholders, and really kind of validating and ground truthing some of the data that we're hearing. We're going to go through a couple different phases, really kind of trying to answer that question of, where are we now? Again, kind of bringing in some of that new data and information that you don't necessarily have right now. And then kind of looking at, where are we going? What is the future of freight in terms of demand and travel and impacts and considerations that we ought to be planning together for as a region? And then really kind of how are we positioned, that strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? How does Pikes Peak compare to other kind of mid-sized regions that potentially could be a trade hub or could look at freight overall? How are we positioned as a region overall to handle freight issues and also to take advantage of some potential for really growing freight and goods movement across the region? And then again, that kind of, what can we do together in the future? That kind of ideas of projects and plans and policies. So really kind of coming out with some key recommendations for the study overall. So that's the high level approach. I do want to note that we are very specifically engaging a number of stakeholders. We've been working closely with the chamber, the city of Fountain, economic development community, to really kind of better understand that link between freight and the economy. We had a few conversations with folks at Fort Carson and really trying to kind of understand some of the military movements when it comes to equipment deployment and how important that is for the region overall. We've had conversations with agencies and organizations and elected officials in Park, Teller, and El Paso County, and look forward to kind of continuing some of that community and public engagement as we go on. Also making sure to engage kind of a wide variety of stakeholders. Freight really touches a lot of issues. So, working with the Colorado Springs Fire Department and thinking about how they handle hazmat responses to rail tankers and commercial trucks that maybe are carrying hazardous materials through our communities. And then, of course, being a kind of a focused effort to make sure that we're engaging businesses that are major employers in the region that depend on supply chains and efficient freight movements to manufacture goods, as well as some of the truckers and carriers that are operating within our region to better understand what are some of the challenges and barriers that they might be facing. So I'm going to share a little bit more about kind of what we are looking at and what we've learned so far, really kind of, again, unveiling some of the new data that's available through this study. But first, kind of, what do we mean when we talk about freight? It's really, stuff. It's everything that moves. And so we're going to be looking very closely at our roadway network and truck cargo, understanding the variety of issues that come along with that. Rail service provides pretty significant opportunities for the region. There's obviously a lot of attention going down into Fountain, but it can also be a really effective way to move goods efficiently as we kind of look to achieve overall state carbon and emissions reduction strategies. Air cargo also has a lot of potential with the airports, but also kind of thinking about some of those military installations that are in the state. We're going to look closely at kind of ties to the economy, trying to understand the role of freight and trades in supporting businesses and supporting the economy and supporting consumers and their demand for next day delivery and making sure that we have goods on store shelves when we go to purchase something. Technology, obviously, there's a lot happening in this space. There's been autonomous trucks tested on Colorado roadways. The new Amazon warehouses are built to accommodate drones. There's lots of interesting things going on here. And so we'll kind of look at what the future of freight technology might hold. And I mentioned military, but it's worth repeating and just kind of understanding some of their deployment issues, as well as some of the traffic and truck parking issues as goods are being received into those military installations and bases. We're also going to look more closely at a lot of the impacts that come along with freight. Clearly, truck safety is very important, both for the safety of drivers and the safety of other travelers, particularly pedestrians and cyclists, as we're seeing a nationwide increase in the amount of collisions between heavy trucks and pedestrian users. Hazmat, again, just kind of recognizing that there are a lot of dangerous goods moving through our communities, and how can we help first responders and local communities understand what's moving and understand those risks overall. Truck parking is an issue across the state and across the nation. There's probably areas throughout your communities where you've seen a number of trucks parked with new federal regulations that kind of govern how many hours a driver can operate. They often need to find informal parking when formal parking is not available. We're also going to be kind of looking at some operational analyses, congestion, delay, bottlenecks. Are there adequate facilities to accommodate trucks when I-25 closes or when we have major events or weather closures? Where do all those trucks go, and how can we kind of think about accommodating those? Clearance issues kind of really involve oversize and overweight and low clearance bridges. There's plenty of those throughout the region. Also might be important to military movements as they're moving heavy cargo overall. We're also going to be kind of looking at rail crossings in there, understanding that that's a potential conflict and safety issue. And then finally, making sure we're kind of touching on the community impacts of freight, recognizing that there is significant noise and air pollution generated by the movement of these heavier vehicles throughout our communities. So a broad brush overview of kind of all the things and the different aspects that we're looking at freight through overall. As I mentioned, we've been underway on this study for just a few months. We've got some initial data to share. We'll kind of look at over the next 20 years, the amount and the value of goods forecast to move to and from and within the PPACG region, is really forecasted to grow pretty significantly. We're looking at growing from about 20 million tons of goods moved every year to 26 million tons over the next 20 years, with a value of almost $25 billion. Those are big numbers, but when you really kind of think about it, everything that you use and consume on a daily basis really needs to be shipped somewhere, somehow. And that's really everything that we see in terms of the trucks and the rails, the railroads that are moving on a daily basis. When we look at how the Pikes Peak region might compare overall, that forecast demand over the next 20 years for freight and goods movement is forecast to grow a little bit more than the state overall, more than some other metro areas in Fort Collins, but maybe not as much as some of the major metro areas to the north. But this is still a very significant number overall, and in terms of percentage increases, really will mean significantly more trucks and products and parcels and packages moving around the region on a daily and hourly basis. When we kind of look at how things move overall, this is very consistent with patterns across the country and across all communities, but trucks really carry the vast majority of goods. Even if something arrives by rail or air, that's often transferred by truck to a distribution center, to a wholesaler, to a retailer store, or even direct to your doorstep versus a delivery van or a delivery vehicle overall. There's still a significant amount of cargo that does move by rail and air, and that does kind of represent an opportunity to shift some of those things from truck onto different modes. That's really some of the advantages of something like the Fountain Dual Service Rail Park. Overall, freight industries really are a significant employer. There's probably about 20,000 employees within El Paso County, a little bit less within Park and Teller, that are directly engaged in kind of goods movement occupations, whether it's actually, driving trucks or vehicles, whether it's kind of thinking about supply chains and how things move overall, or whether it's actually kind of stocking shelves and moving things from point A to point B. Broadly, that's about 3% of all regional employment. But when we think about the entire economy and all the industries, we like to think about kind of freight-dependent industries, those things like construction, utilities, waste management, retail. All those industries and employers really do rely on moving goods on a daily basis. All of that employment is about 1 in 5 workers, or about 20% of all employment across the region. So really maintaining a safe, reliable, and efficient freight transportation system is critical to our overall economy and the Pikes Peak region economic competitiveness. When we look to the future, many of those industries that are freight dependent or freight reliant are forecast to grow pretty significantly, particularly kind of retail and sales occupations. That'll mean a lot more goods are moving into the region to kind of fill up those store shelves, or again, meet consumer demand for the goods that we're purchasing online. Again, that will lead to a significant increase that we saw at the beginning of that increase in overall trade and goods. We're starting to kind of get into some of the additional economic development data, kind of understanding some of those patterns around employers and industries and supply chains. Just wanted to note that kind of export-oriented manufacturing often provides significant advantages to our communities with more kind of stable employment and significant indirect economic impacts to our community. Colorado Springs in particular used to be kind of a hub back before the Great Recession for high-tech components, semiconductors, computers, electronics. Many of those were manufactured for sales overseas. We begin to see a pretty significant decline over the last 15 years in exports and manufacturers selling overseas. Again, this is kind of an important economic base, and it's kind of a trend to note overall. And the reason I highlight that is that all those goods that are coming in to fill our store shelves and to meet that future retail demand, those trucks and trains might be returning from the region empty. And so that really provides an opportunity for manufacturers and businesses in the region to produce more goods and to fill up those trucks so that they're not backhauling empties and increasing cost for businesses and consumers. Starting to look at a little bit more at those operational issues that I mentioned, clearance and operations and truck parking and railroad crossings. Colorado Springs has got a great wealth of crash data. So we're kind of looking at, where are some of those hotspots related to heavy commercial motor vehicles. There's, again, a tremendous amount of data there, and there probably is seeing a general increase in those crashes involving heavy vehicles overall. Similarly, with rail safety, there's a number of crossings throughout the region. There's many trespassing incidents and collisions at those crossings. Those can often be very significant. Those railroad crossings trucks can often high center, or we might see passenger cars have incidents at those. And so we're kind of looking at, are there patterns overall? Are there need to improve or have grade separations at any of those railroad crossings? So some of this kind of safety data will lead to some of those future projects and potential locations overall. So that was it. We just kind of wanted to hit some of the highlights for some of the data that we're looking at right now. Again, there's a lot more where that came from. We're working on drawing out our conclusions, validating those with our partners and stakeholders, and then really using that to inform some of our future analysis. And that'll lead to where are the significant freight corridors, where there's significant opportunities for freight-oriented development, or where we're seeing a lot of impacts from good movements in our communities. And then thinking about how we can convert those into potential projects and ultimately grant potential. So as we kind of look forward, where we're going next on this study, we're in the process of updating committees, including the TAC, and thank you for the opportunity today, as well as some of the partners that we've been engaging throughout this effort. We're looking forward to kind of finalizing our existing conditions and needs data. Again, that's providing a lot of new data that the region didn't have before. That will absolutely be used in the SEDS, the long range plan, and by partners overall. And then we're kind of looking forward to the summer months and really trying to hold some industry forums to engage business, to learn directly from trucking companies and rail operators, so that we can kind of really begin that operational analysis. Where are some of our challenges and issues, and how do we think about solving those? We'll continue to keep this committee updated as we learn more and we learn particularly from our stakeholders, and come back to you with some of our major findings, recommendations, and conclusions. So with that, I'd gladly open it up to any questions or comments.
All right, thank you, Evan. It's Gail Servant. I do have one question. I think there's at least one more question in the room, and it looks like Victoria's got her hand up. But if you go back to, I think it's just maybe now 2 slides. I did just want to point out to you, no, back down to that rail safety right there. I did want to let you know that South Royer crossing is going to be closed in the very near future, and we are going to be replacing it with an at-grade crossing. It was going to be the future Twin Bridges Road project. And then I think Tim Roberts has a question because he oversees the city's freight permitting and operations within the city. So go ahead, Tim.
Yes, thank you, Gail. Tim Roberts, City of Colorado Springs. Yes, I was wondering, who are you coordinating with anybody in the city, and who that might be? And also I noticed that you had you identified looking at like low crossings for freight. And are you looking at just the state, federal facilities, or are you looking at local also? So I got a lot of questions about like what, and it sounds like you've already started the study, and what kind of, I guess, coordination and collaboration you're going to do with local agencies.
Thank you, Tim. I think right off the bat, we'd love to coordinate with you. Jason O'Brien is kind of our PPACG liaison. It'd be great to have a conversation with you to kind of understand permitting in the city and kind of what you're seeing on the ground. So let's absolutely make that happen. And we're absolutely welcome to any other partners or local agencies that we ought to be touching base with. A second, I think we'll really be relying for rail crossing specifically on the Federal Railroad Administration data. That should include all state, local, and private rail crossings. But that's some of the reason that we want to be coordinating and touching base with our partners, because sometimes the data doesn't always tell us everything we want to know. So I think as we continue to update this committee or work directly with you, having you kind of help validate or inform us where the data might not be telling us something would be wonderful.
Okay, because I do know that we have some local streets that have substandard height. As Gail pointed out, you had the one crossing that's going to close, be relocated actually. And we did just recently update our truck route map too, so.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would absolutely love to follow up with you.
So Jason, I didn't know if you wanted to speak now. Victoria has her hand up as well.
No, I'm here just in case.
Great, thanks. Victoria, go ahead with your question, please.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I would also like to throw my hat into having maybe a quick meeting with you about some of the freight areas that I have concerns on El Paso County roads. We have a really large landfill that basically takes all the trash in the entire region. And there are 3 gravel roads that those trash trucks use to get to that landfill. So I have some big concerns about that. I also can look at work with my bridge people to look at some of our bridges that are weight restricted, that are restricting some of that fleet or that freight. So I'd also like to, chat with you about some of that data and some of those concerns.
Absolutely. Thank you, Victoria. Those are direct issues that we want to look at specifically. Certainly the bridge overweight and the clearance issues, and then some of that landfill and acknowledging that, the freight impacts. That's some of the things that we can only learn directly from folks like you. And so we're really looking forward to, maybe getting a whole bunch of people together in a room and marking up some maps across the region so that we can kind of really highlight where some of those direct issues are. So maybe that'd be a great way to engage you, but we can certainly reach out and have a one-on-one too.
And
Thank you.
I would certainly include Ben Sheets with City of Fountain on that discussion.
Yeah, good point. Thank you, Tim. It looks like Rob Fry has his hand up.
Yeah, I just also recommend from CDOT that you reach out to Craig Hurst if you haven't done so. He's our freight coordinator.
Yep, we're working closely with Craig, both on the statewide freight plan, but also on this as well.
Perfect, thank you.
All right. Any other questions or discussion topics for Evan? Or Jason for that matter. All right. Well, thank you both. Appreciate your time. Thanks, Evan, for joining us today.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, and I did hit everyone that was online. Okay, good. Moving on to this item 7B, data acquisition. Will?
Hello, William Mast with PPACG. Just wanted to bring before the TAC an information item. As most of you, or hopefully all of you, are aware, last year TAC approved the purchase of regional transportation data or traffic data. We went through an RFP process. The selected vendor was Streetlight, and we have a regional streetlight service available for all the member governments within PPACG. That is coming up for renewal. We wrote the RFP as a 1-year contract. But we did include language that specified that it could be up for renewal. So because of that, we do not have to go through an RFP process again if we would like to stick with Streetlight. If we do stick with Streetlight, the price stays the same because they locked it in for us for up to 3 years. The subscription service with the advanced analytics package that we currently have on our license is $289,000. Last year, that match, which was 17.21%, was paid jointly by El Paso County and Colorado Springs. The match dollars in order to continue with that service through 2024 would then be $49,736.90, same as it was last year. So for this information item, we just would like to bring that before the TAC, let you know that that is going to have to come up for renewal, and would like guidance and an action item probably next month on whether or not we'd like to proceed with the streetlight service, or whether or not you'd like us to go through an RFP and entertain other offers and look at an alternate vendor, and also find out which of our member governments would be willing to come in again for that match in order to use money from the tip to secure the contract.
Okay, great. Thank you, Will. Victoria, I think that city and traffic engineering and yourself, we split those costs. I can't remember the exact split that we used. Is that still something we have in mind? And is Dole still on? Dole, I think, is the biggest user of the streetlight data.
Actually, we are. Colleen uses it.
Anyway, but I don't think
I don't
Dole's
know.
there. Dole,
Still a
think
big fan of it.
oh, he is.
He
Okay.
uses it a lot. We actually have our contractors using it a lot as well. So Gail, I don't remember what the split is off the top of my head, but I am still interested in the streetlight data and using the same vendor and working with you to figure out what our split should be.
Okay, great. Well, let's work that out then offline, and then we'll get Joel to jump in and help us out since he's the super user.
Sorry, I tried to unmute myself, but yes, no, I use it a lot and very much would appreciate getting to continue to use it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Joel. We'll discuss this offline and be prepared for making a recommendation next month. But I do want to echo what Victoria says. We are very interested in just doing an extension with our current vendor. It's just really figuring out where the local match is coming from. So.
Sounds good. If anybody has any questions at all about the service, please feel free to reach out to myself. And again, we will have this up as an action item then next month.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, moving on to item 7C. Got to get back to the top of the agenda. CDOT updates, standing item. I don't know, Lachelle, if you want to jump in first.
I'm good. I don't have anything. Thank you.
Jeff, anything?
Yeah, thanks. Let me step in. Kathleen Collins sends her regards today. She's on vacation, so I have a couple updates from headquarters before Region 2. On our freight mobility and safety branch, we've hired a freight planner and a new freight intern, and I can give you those names if anybody's interested. And then in our multimodal planning branch at headquarters, we have a new Main Streets and Active Transportation section manager. Her name is Medora Bornhoft, and I can happily provide that name as well. She began here at the beginning of this month, and I believe she comes to us from North Front Range MPO, I want to say. Thanks, Will. Keeping tabs on me. And then a full-time planning liaison position for the multimodal planning branch is open and posted at headquarters. And I don't know why I'm advertising their job positions whenever we have our own open and posted here in, or about to be posted here in Region 2 for my old job, the transit liaison. And upcoming Transportation Commission items for June, if anybody's interested. Fee-based structure for CDOT to provide right-of-way access for fiber is on the agenda for adoption. Policy Directive 1610, greenhouse gas mitigation measures update is on the agenda for TC adoption. There's an update on the Mustang and Outrider family of services around the state. And then the Transportation Commission Officers Nominating Committee will announce nominations for the chair and vice chair, and that is all from headquarters. And Rob, do you have anything to chip in for us here in Region 2?
I'm not sure if you mentioned it or not, but did you want to share the name of our new planning person that's starting in July?
Minor detail, thank you. Wednesday, July 5th, we have a new planning specialist 1 starting in Region 2 in Pueblo. Her name is Lindsay Jaquez, and she comes to us from Pueblo Community College in the State Department of Education. So I'm really excited to be getting some help here really soon.
Perfect. Great. Anyone else from CDOT on? I think that may have just been you 3 today. How? What's that? Oh, that's right. Phil is on. Phil? Is that, oh, Andy raised his hand. Go ahead, Andy.
Andy, you should be able to unmute now.
All right, how's that?
We can hear you, Andy.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, I'm Andy. I'm the resident engineer for the design unit that is advertising the Fillmore Garden of the Gods I-25 widening project. That project has advertised successfully today, so that's a good thing. We do have a little bit of a hiccup with CSU, but we're working to get that resolved and don't anticipate there being a problem with award, which is scheduled for 5 weeks from now.
Great, thank you. Anything else from our guest from CDOT? All right, I'm going to move on. We can, if you need to, we can pick it back up. AIJA updates. Our standing item or other funding sources, Danielle?
In the interest of time, I did include all of the currently open USDOT notices of funding opportunity in your packet, as well as a table of upcoming known NOFOs, and also a few state funding opportunities to include that DOLA local match program that was mentioned earlier. Unless there are any other questions, I think everything is in the packet.
Okay, great, thanks. Any questions for her? All right, we'll move on to the next item. The LRTP update.
The LRTP, again, we tried to keep some brief notes here in the meeting materials for you. Will, do you want to talk briefly about the land use modeling piece of that?
Sure, thank you. So we do have a consultant, Maureen with Wilson, and Wilson's going to be our consultant to help us with the land use portion. I believe most of the TAC is familiar with the last long-range transportation plan and how PPACG previously developed a separate small area forecast. That small area forecast was not actually a requirement, and we've decided not to do a small area forecast and publish that as a separate item. Instead, we are focusing strictly on land use forecast for the LRTP. Also, we're making a change. The last land use forecast was done in-house using statistical and modeling tools, primarily Urban Sim, and then they came up with an output and then kind of shoved that into the LRTP. We are taking a different approach for our land use modeling. We are going to be reaching out to our jurisdictions and trying to come up with more of a Delphi style process, whereby we are taking everybody's existing land use and their growth plans and long range plans and going to come up with what we're calling the best fit alternative for the region. We understand that this might be fairly contentious. We'll see as we get through it. But we really want this to be an open process. We really want this to be a process where all of our jurisdictions have a seat at the table, and we are really considering their own growth forecasts, their own zoning changes and plans, and trying to come up with something that still works with our control total for the region, but reflects as best as possible everybody's own intentions for growth and development in the future. So if anybody's interested in being a part of that process, please let me know. We are envisioning probably two different, I wouldn't say committees, but certainly two different meetings. One that's kind of more of an executive style, and then the other one we're calling more of a technical. The technical will probably involve more of the land use planners in the region, but if any transportation planners or anyone else and TAC that would like to be involved, again, just please let me know. We'd like to have more people at the table.
Just to let you know, I'd definitely like to be part of that.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Lan.
So just a question. I remember a few rounds, I don't remember which long range plan, we actually used two scenarios for funding projection. One is based on infill, one is sprawl. Do you see that happen this time or just one projection?
Nope, just one.
Okay.
Yeah, again, going for the best fit. So we know, for example, like Colorado Springs is going to be planning on a lot of infill, and that's something that we're just going to include right in the regional growth plan. And then when we have to balance that out against future development, like through Banning Lewis Ranch, as well as out in unincorporated El Paso County, Monument Fountain. Again, what we really foresee in a practical aspect is looking at everybody's growth and saying what's likely to happen, and then saying, okay, unfortunately, we can't have everybody's likely to happen scenario by 2035 and 2045 come through, because we have to hit the control total, and kind of having to dial it down just a little bit, but still reflecting if we're planning for infill, like we know Colorado Springs is working actively to do, making sure that that is still in our forecast.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions on what Will presented? All right, Danielle, did you want to add more?
Sure, yes, please. We all will also, you will likely hear from us very soon through Kearns and West. They are doing our public involvement for our phase 1 of our LRTP. They are going to be looking for folks who are interested in participating in our Regional Transportation Plan Advisory Committee. And then we also have some requests going out for any sort of existing conditions, data for the land use model, any plans or studies that you might have conducted that we can pull in to help inform the LRTP as well. And then if there are no other questions on that, we also have a little bit of an attachment for the LRTP development and kind of some clarity on how the CMP rolls into the LRTP. I know we're running a little longer than usual today, so we can set up something separate if that would be preferred, or we can just go ahead and launch into it now.
Oh, I think this is super helpful and I appreciate you putting this together. The concerns that were raised from the workshop when we did the scoring from the CMP and then a subsequent discussion we had about some of the member governments. It was really just to emphasize, and I think this graphic does it, that the CMP 1 is just one element in the scoring in the LRTP, and we will be establishing those goals and that scoring when we go through the LRTP process in the future. And if for some reason we determine that there's going to be some issues or challenges with the CMP scoring, that we have the ability to recommend an addendum or modification either through this body or back through the PPACG board. So I think this answered the questions and concerns. I don't feel it's necessary to go through it, but I will open it up to others in particular that had concerns previously to make sure they feel like it's adequately addressed. I get a thumbs up from Victoria. Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Jason for Palmer Lake. I'm satisfied with this for sure going forward here, and all my questions and answers, all my questions have been addressed. So I'm very happy about all this.
Okay, perfect. Anyone else want to have any further discussion on this update on the upcoming process and scoring for the LRTP? All right, I think that we're ready to move on from the update unless you want to add something
Perfect.
else.
No, we just really wanted everyone to be comfortable and understand that there are multiple opportunities to not only change the scoring, but also the mix of projects and all of that. We want it to be collaborative and as Will says, transparent and make sure everybody's comfortable.
No, appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you for addressing our concerns. All right.
Gail?
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, just I wanted to point out that under the financial plan, we had that other little green box kind of go in there that talks about program allocation. I have to admit that as I'm getting older, my memory's not as good as it used to be. I seem to remember that we did have that program allocation and we set money aside for small projects and design. But obviously in the future, you don't have to do that at all. You don't have to have any allocation, or you could add new things like environmental or other stuff. So I just wanted to make sure that sort of jives with everybody's memory of what we've done in the past. And if it doesn't, I'm happy to admit that I don't remember as well as I thought, and I can take it out. But I seem to remember this from the last time, and it seemed to be something that made people comfortable, that they made sure that there was a certain amount of money set aside for certain things. But I could be confusing like a TIP process with a long-range plan process. So again, nothing set in stone, and in the interest of time, you can let us know offline if that's something that you guys aren't comfortable with or are comfortable with, and we can address it further as we move into the 2050 long-range plan, because all this is marked draft right now, right? And you guys still have the ability to change it. So I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, John. And does anyone have any questions for John on what he just stated and how the financial plan is going to relate? All right. Hearing none, I appreciate this update. I really appreciate this graphic, and my guess is we're going to be referring back to it as folks have questions as we're going through the process. So I appreciate you putting that together. All right, moving on to our item 7F, the tip update. And I think Jessica, you were going to give us an update there.
Yep, quick update. So we just finished up the project status meetings with the jurisdictions. So we're working on the roll forwards of 23 into 24 right now. And we're figuring out the timing of when the major amendment will take place, whether it's before or after CDOT's system comes back up. So we'll work that out, and that's coming. We are getting prepared for the call for projects for the 25-29 tip. Just finishing up a little bit of the allocation information on that. And so you'll see that really soon. Where we're at in the schedule for that tip, I think we're still safe. We're good. We have a large buffer next year. So that should be in the next few weeks that that'll be coming to you for your projects. And then we'll do a workshop and go from there. And then we will be reaching out for transit numbers and verifying with CDOT before anything comes out. So that's where we're at in that process right now. If you have any questions, let me know.
Great. Thanks, Jessica. Any questions for Jessica? All right, moving on to item number 8, member entity announcements. Does anyone have anything they want to announce?
Okay, I'll just mention a couple things. The long range plan, we sent out the award letter to Nelson Nygaard. And we're working through that process right now. Still waiting on the $100,000 through CDOT, but they are making progress there. And Kathleen is really helping in that process. We are in the middle of our Zero Fare for Better Air campaign. So it's free fare on all buses and ADA paratransit vehicles. So if you haven't tried it, give it a shot. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have one, and I actually meant to do this very early on in the meeting. Like the city is very happy to announce we have a new transit division manager. And if you didn't pick up on it, when Lan did the introduction, she has a new title now. Lan has been selected to lead Mountain Metro Transit on behalf of the city of Colorado Springs. So we're thrilled to have her in that role, and a big congratulations to her.
Thank you, Gail.
All right, any other member announcements, member government announcements? All right, I'm going to move on to item number 9. Any requests for a future TAC meeting agenda items? Hearing none, if you have others, I'm sure that you could email myself or Danelle, and we would take that in consideration for our July meeting. With that, I think if there's no last minute ads that people want to, I'm going to adjourn this meeting at 3:03. Thank you.